My coworker Frank drove a truck that looked like it had lost a fight with a lawnmower and then got pushed down a hill for good measure. Every single day, he'd sit at his desk and unwrap a lunch that just made you feel sorry for him. It was usually a single, slightly bruised apple in a sandwich in a baggie that had clearly been washed and reused a dozen times. We all just assumed he was struggling. We'd even offer to buy him coffee, and he'd always politely decline with a quiet smile. It wasn't until after he quit that we started putting the pieces together. It started as a whisper in accounting, then a rumor in the break room, and before we knew it, we'd uncovered the truth. Frank wasn't struggling. He was, without a doubt, the wealthiest person in the entire company, and we had all been completely oblivious. Looking back, the signs were there. They were subtle. They were easy to miss, but they were undeniable. And these are the 9 clues he left behind that we only pieced together after he was long gone. The inciting incident. It all started a Monday after Frank put in his 2 weeks' notice. His reason for leaving was vague. Something about a passion project and wanting more family time. We all just nodded along, figuring he'd found a slightly better paying job and was just being polite. His farewell was as quiet as he was. No party, no big speech. On his last day, he packed up the single photo of his family, shook a few hands, and walked out to his beat-up truck for the last time. We figured that was the last we'd ever hear of Frank. A week later, Sarah from accounting was processing the final paperwork. She walked over to my desk, looking completely bewildered. "You are not going to believe this," she said. "Frank didn't cash his last 3 paychecks. They were just sitting in his file. When I called him, he just said, 'Oh, I must have forgotten. No rush. Just mail them whenever you get a chance.'" That was the first crack in the facade. Forgetting a paycheck? Forgetting 3? For the rest of us, who watched our bank accounts like hawks before payday, this was just unthinkable. That was the first domino. It got us talking. And once we started comparing stories, the image of poor Frank began to crumble, replaced by a mystery that consumed the office for weeks. We started digging back through our memories, and suddenly little, insignificant moments started to look like massive, flashing signs. Sign 1. He never, ever complained about money. The first and most obvious clue, in retrospect, was Frank's total serenity around money. In an office, money is a constant topic of conversation, usually complaints. People will moan about gas prices, the cost of groceries, rent going up, or a surprise vet bill that just wiped out their savings. These conversations were our bread and butter, the universal language of the modern office worker. But Frank was a silent island in the sea of financial anxiety. He'd sit through these complaint fests with a placid expression, nodding sympathetically but never adding his own 2 cents. We mistook his silence for shame. We thought, "Of course he's quiet. He's probably too embarrassed to admit how broke he is." I remember one time, the annual health insurance premiums had just been announced. They'd gone up by a staggering 15%. The office was in an uproar. People were huddled around the coffee machine, furiously doing math on their phones, trying to figure out how they were going to absorb this new cost. It was chaos. I looked over at Frank, expecting to see sheer terror on his face. Instead, he was calmly reading a book at his desk. I walked over and asked, "Frank, aren't you freaking out about this insurance hike?" He looked up, bookmarked his page, and said, "It is what it is. No sense in worrying about things you can't control." At the time, I thought it was a sign of defeat. Now I realize it was the opposite. It was the calm of someone whose financial foundation was so solid that a 15% increase was just a drop in the bucket, not a tidal wave. Some financially secure people feel less compelled to complain about money because it doesn't have that emotional hold on them. It's not a source of stress. It's just a tool. Frank wasn't reacting because for him, there was nothing to react to. Sign 2. He lived way below his means. This one should have been obvious. It was staring us in the face every single day. The truck was the most visible clue. A 20-year-old Ford with patchwork body panels and a low rumble that announced his arrival. We all drove sensible sedans, or SUVs, most on a payment plan. Frank's truck was a paid-off relic. We'd joke, "Frank, are you ever going to get a new set of wheels?" And he'd just laugh and say, "She still runs, doesn't she?" Then there was the lunch. The sad, sad lunch. While the rest of us were dropping $15 a day on takeout, Frank was eating his simple, homemade meal. We saw it as a sign of extreme frugality born of necessity. Now I see it as discipline. By not buying lunch, he was saving thousands of dollars a year. His whole wardrobe was a study in anti-status. His clothes were clean and neat, but never branded. No logos, no fancy watches. He wore the same rotation of generic polo shirts and comfy-looking pants every week. In a world where we're all subtly trying to signal success, Frank was actively signaling nothing. He didn't need to look rich, because he was rich. The book, The Millionaire Next Door, talks about this exact phenomenon. Many millionaires don't drive luxury cars or live in flashy houses. They build wealth by controlling their consumption. Frank was a living embodiment of that. He kept the gap between his income and his spending incredibly wide, and in that gap, wealth accumulates. Sign 3. He was incredibly patient with purchases. One of the hallmarks of a wealth-building mindset is a long-term perspective, and this extends to buying things. No impulse buys, just research, comparison, and patience. They've mastered deferred gratification. I'll never forget the great espresso machine debate. The cheap drip coffee machine in the break room finally died, and management agreed to reimburse us for a new one up to a certain amount. The office immediately erupted. I wanted the quick and easy pod machine. Someone else wanted a fancy, complicated one. The debate raged for a week. Finally, Frank, who had been silent the whole time, spoke up. "I've been looking into it," he said. "There's a Swiss-made machine, a Jura. It's more expensive up front, but it's fully automatic, grinds fresh beans, and the maintenance is minimal. The reviews say they last for a decade or more." We all scoffed. The price was nearly double our budget. "Frank, we can't afford that," I said. He just nodded and replied, "Okay." The next Monday, a brand new, gleaming Jura espresso machine was sitting on the counter. It was beautiful. There was no note. Frank never said a word. He just quietly made himself a perfect espresso and went back to his desk. We all assumed management had caved. It wasn't until after he left that we figured it out. Someone in accounting, spurred by the paycheck mystery, did some digging. The machine wasn't on any company expense report. Frank had bought it himself. He saw a problem, researched the best long-term solution, and when the group opted for a cheaper, inferior option, he just quietly solved the problem the right way. It probably cost him over $2,000, and he never once looked for credit or even acknowledgement. He was playing a different game. He wasn't thinking about the price. He was thinking about the value. Sign 4. He focused on assets, not appearances. While the rest of us were spending our money on things that lose value, new cars, the latest phones, trendy clothes, Frank was quietly accumulating assets. This became clear in the most roundabout way. One day, a few of us were talking about dream vacations. I wanted Italy. Someone else wanted Japan. We asked Frank where he would go if money were no object. He thought for a moment and said, "I've always wanted to see the national parks. Maybe get an RV and spend a year on the road." We kind of chuckled. An RV trip seemed so practical, so Frank. But then he said something that stuck with me. The great thing about an RV is that it's a home on wheels. You can live in it, travel in it, and if you buy the right one, it holds its value pretty well. It's an asset you can enjoy. At the time, I didn't think much of it. But after he left, a colleague who was house hunting nearby got curious and decided to look up local property records. He typed in Frank's name. It turned out Frank didn't just own his own modest, paid-off house. He owned 3 other properties in town, all rentals. He was a landlord, a small-time real estate mogul, hiding in plain sight. He wasn't buying flashy cars that would depreciate the second they left the lot. He was buying assets that generated income. That's the fundamental difference between looking rich and being rich. Looking rich is about spending. Being rich is about owning. Frank was an owner. His multiple income streams gave him a level of security the rest of us couldn't even imagine. Sign 5. He valued his time above everything. This is one of the most subtle but powerful signs of true financial freedom. There's an idea that people who are struggling for money trade their time for it, while people who have money use their money to get more time. Frank did this constantly, but we never saw it for what it was. Our office was downtown, and parking was a nightmare. Most of us spent 20 minutes every morning circling the block for a free spot to avoid the garage fees. Not Frank. He paid for a reserved spot right next to the building. It was expensive, probably a few $100 a month. We thought he was crazy. Frank, why waste money on that? We'd ask. He'd just say, it saves me time in the morning. He also embraced any service that saved him effort. He got his groceries delivered. He used a laundry service. He even hired a mobile car wash to clean his beat-up truck in the parking garage once a month, which we found hilarious. Why polish a junker? We saw it as laziness. Now I see it as efficiency. He had calculated that his time was worth more than the cost of those services. While we spent our weekends grocery shopping and doing laundry, he was spending his on things that mattered more, his family, his hobbies, and managing his growing real estate portfolio. He was buying back his life, 1 hour at a time. Wealthier people are often more likely to pay for time-saving services, and Frank was a prime example. Sign 6. He never participated in office gossip or status games. Office politics are fueled by insecurity. People gossip to feel included, to gain social capital, or tear others down. Frank never played. He was friendly to everyone, but he kept a professional distance. He didn't get drawn into arguments or take sides. He was like Switzerland, a neutral territory. When a juicy piece of gossip made the rounds, he would listen politely and then change the subject or excuse himself. I remember when a big promotion was up for grabs, and 2 colleagues were practically at war, sabotaging each other to curry favor with management. It was ugly. Frank just kept his head down and did his work. He ended up getting a different, quieter promotion a few months later. More responsibility, no fancy new title. He didn't seem to care about the title, only the work. He had a quiet confidence you see in people who don't need external validation. Their self-worth isn't tied to a job title or their spot on the office hierarchy. Frank wasn't playing the same game as us. We were playing checkers, try and make the next move. He was playing chess, thinking 10 moves ahead, and his game had nothing to do with office politics. Sign 7. He was incredibly calm in a crisis. There's a certain unflappable quality that comes with having a deep financial cushion. When you know a job loss wouldn't ruin you, you can face uncertainty with a calm that is baffling to everyone else. About a year before Frank left, our company went through a major restructuring. Layoff rumors were flying, and panic was thick in the air. Everyone was updating their resumes and frantically networking. Everyone, except for Frank. He was the picture of tranquility. He just continued his work with the same quiet diligence. One afternoon, I saw him at his desk, not working, but sketching in a small notebook. I was so stressed that his calmness almost felt like an insult. How can you be so relaxed? I asked, my voice a little sharper than I intended. We could all be out of a job next week. He looked up from his sketchbook, and for the first time, I felt like I saw the real Frank. He wasn't sad or defeated. He was just peaceful. He said, I'll be okay, no matter what happens. And you will be too, eventually. It was such a strange thing to say. At the time, I thought he was just being naively optimistic. But now I get it. He knew he had rental income. He knew he had a massive savings and investment portfolio. For him, a layoff wouldn't have been a disaster. It would have been an unexpected vacation. He wasn't in survival mode. He was in optimization mode. He had built a life where he didn't need this job, which gave him the freedom to approach it without fear. Sign 8. His lifestyle inflation was 0. This was maybe the most baffling clue of all. Over the 6 years I worked with Frank, we all got promotions and raises. And every time our income went up, our lifestyle went up with it. A raise meant a new car, a bigger apartment, more expensive vacations. This is lifestyle inflation, and it's the reason most people stay broke, no matter how much they earn. Frank got raises, too. He was good at his job. His income had almost certainly doubled in the time I knew him, but his lifestyle didn't change one bit. Same beat-up truck, same sad lunch, same generic clothes. We just couldn't understand it. We'd say, Frank, you got a huge raise. Go celebrate. Buy a new truck. He would just smile and say, I don't need a new truck. This is one of the biggest secrets of building wealth. It's not just about how much you make. It's about the gap between what you make and what you spend. By keeping his lifestyle constant as his income grew, Frank was turning that gap into a chasm. Every extra dollar from a raise wasn't going to a car payment. It was going straight into his investments, compounding quietly in the background. He was exercising intentional restraint, a superpower in a world that tells you to spend everything you have. Sign 9. He didn't need you to know. This is a final and most profound clue. Frank had no desire for anyone to know he was wealthy. In fact, he actively concealed it. He wasn't just being private. He was being strategic. Think about it. If everyone knew he was a millionaire, how would things have changed? People would have treated him differently. They'd be jealous, or they'd ask him for money. His relationships would have become transactional. By appearing to be just a regular guy, he could have genuine interactions. He could do his work without distraction, and he could observe the world from a unique vantage point. Privacy, it turns out, is the ultimate luxury. Money talks, but wealth whispers. Frank was whispering. The fact that he bought the office a $2,000 espresso machine and never told a soul is the perfect example. He didn't want thanks or recognition. He just wanted a better cup of coffee. He solved a problem and was happy to let everyone else benefit, as long as it didn't draw attention to him. He didn't need our applause because he wasn't living his life for us. After the mystery of the paychecks and the discovery of the rental properties, the full picture of Frank finally snapped into focus. We realized a beat-up truck wasn't a sign of poverty. It was a sign of freedom from car payments. The sad lunch wasn't struggle. It was discipline. His quietness wasn't shame. It was a calm assurance of someone who would win a game the rest of us didn't even know we were playing. Frank wasn't just a secret millionaire. He was a teacher. He taught us that wealth isn't about what you show. It's about what you have. It's not about designer clothes. It's about owning income-producing assets. It's not about keeping up with the Joneses. It's about building a life of freedom and options. The clues were there all along, hidden in plain sight. We were just so caught up in the appearances of wealth that we couldn't recognize the real thing when it was sitting right next to us, eating a sad-looking sandwich and quietly planning its next real estate acquisition. Frank taught us that the wealthiest person in the room is often the one who looks the least like it. It's a crazy story, right? And it really makes you think. Have you ever worked with someone like Frank? A secret millionaire hiding in plain sight? I would love to hear your stories and what clues you noticed. Drop a comment below and share your own experiences. These kind of stories are more common than you think, and they teach us so much about what wealth really is. And if you found this story as fascinating as I did, and you want more content that pulls back the curtain on money and success, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. It really helps the channel out, and it ensures you won't miss what's coming next. Thanks for watching.